One of the many reasons why educators or we feel that reading is so difficult to achieve is that we fail to understand what reading is. And this session, as I present to you earlier, talks about the nature of reading. So let us understand why reading, or what is reading. So reading is a dynamic process in which the reader interacts with the text to construct meaning. Let us focus on the word dynamic. What does dynamic mean? Dynamic means it's alive. So it's a process that is alive where the students interact with or the reader interacts with the text to be able to get the meaning. And inherent in that interaction with the text is the child's ability to activate prior knowledge and use different reading strategies and to adapt to the reading situation. What is the implication of that to us teachers? That it is important that we should be able to activate the prior knowledge of the readers so that they will be able to relate that to the text that they are reading. But in the classroom, what's happening in the classroom? Teachers or we just ask our students to open their book on page 5, let them read the stories and answer the questions on page 7. Where is that activating prior knowledge? How can our reader interact with the text when they don't even have any experience about the text? There are 5 alternative views about reading that, which were explained by reading experts. Number 1 is reading as a skill. Number 2, reading as a process. Reading as comprehension. Reading as development. And reading as a strategy. Let us talk about this one by one. The first one is reading as a skill. While readers' knowledge of language is recognized as an integral part of reading print, reading is viewed as a skill that is learned. In fact, reading is a unitary skill that we use to process text. So if reading is a skill, none of the learners can be categorized as frustrated readers because it is something that we can learn, something that we can develop, like cooking, driving. But the question is that what will it take for a learners to be able to learn that skill? And because it is said that it is a unitary skills, let's find out what are the skills needed for a students to be able to read. So, reading as a skill is a global skills, and there are 2 big skills. The first one is word identification skills, and the second one is comprehension skills. Let's talk about this one by one. Word identification skills. The first one is whole word recognition. So these are the words that we introduce through sight words. We ask our students to memorize the whole word. And this is the practice in the classroom. We keep on asking them, we provide them with drills. Beautiful, 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 until they will be able to memorize the word. But the question is, will that be enough? Will our students be able to memorize all the words in the dictionary, all the words in the text so that they'll be able to read the text? Definitely it's not, because it's just a pinch of the reading as a skill. The next one is visual configuration. This happens when the students or when the kids are learning to read. They look at the visual, they look at the drawings, and they'll be able to tell stories. And all the while we're thinking that they are reading. See, I hope you remember your kids, you know, they look at the book, and even if the book is upside down, they look at all those visuals there and they say, oh, a grandmother is cooking, because there's a visual there that shows an old lady is cooking. We thought that it's reading, but it's just one of the skills. And actually, it's not yet reading per se. The students just put meaning to the visual that they saw. The third one is meaning association. So, they, you know, like, they know that this one, the visual, this, you know, like, this is McDo. And they come to McDo every weekend. So McDo became part of their oral vocabulary. So once they saw this, they'll say, McDo, McDo, McDo. But they don't know how to read yet the word McDo. But because it's part of their oral vocabulary, they were able to say the words. Okay, the next part is whole word analysis in context. Okay, so that's why we use context clues for the students to be able to get the meaning of the words by analyzing the context in that particular sentence. So that is whole word analysis in context. We recognize the word, we identify the word by using those other words that we know in the context of that statement. Okay? The most critical really is the graphophoneme correspondence analysis. Graphophoneme means grapheme and phoneme. Grapheme refers to the symbol, while phoneme refers to the sound. So it's the combination of the symbol, example letter M, and the sound of letter M is M. That's graphophoneme analysis. But there are different components of graphophoneme analysis. Number one is phonics. Okay? So this is using alphabetic principles. So this is associating the symbol so with the sound. Example, single letter. So this is letter M, the sound is M. This is letter B, the sound is B. That's single letter, associating the symbols and the sound. Then we have clusters for English. We have the CL, we have the CH. So you identify that. So we associate. CL is cl, CH is ch. Okay, so we have to teach that to our students for them to be able to read, because it is part of the skills that they're gonna develop to be better reader. The third one is inflectional ending. So these are the ing that we add to words. Okay, like example, climb, we add ing, climbing. We have to teach that, because if they will be able to read the word climb using the CL and the so climbed, they need to realize that if we add ing to that word climb, it becomes climbing. Okay, so those are parts of graphophoneme analysis. The other one is the spelling pattern. So when they learn that k, a, t is cat, they will be able to spell the word, because we will say, what's the first sound? It's k, which is consonant. What's the middle sound? It's a, which is a vowel. And what's the last sound? T, which is a consonant. So it's a CBC pattern. So they'll be able to identify the word by identifying the consonants and the vowel sounds in that word. Then we have the CBCE, like hate. Okay, from the word hat. Okay, it's act, hat. If you add an E, it becomes hate. So there's a rule in that the students should be able to learn to be able to read the word. The explanation is that the short A becomes long A if the word is in CBCE, or if the word ends with an E or a vowel. So hat becomes hate. Okay, then the VC, which is vowel consonant, is, of. So they should know. What's the first sound? E. What's the next sound? S. So is. That's is. So that's VC, vowel and consonant. Then of course, this is often used in the mother tongue and the Filipino, the syllabication. Students should be able to learn the syllables of the word, how many syllables there are, and what comprise that syllables for them to be able to read. And syllabication is a skill. Okay, so there are different types of syllables. We have a word with 2 syllables, like doing, okay, 3 syllables or more. Then, of course, after they'll be able to read the words through syllables, there's also a way identifying or assigning accent to a word will also help them to be able to read the word correctly. Then the other part of the word identification is the whole word recognition. Of course, this talks about root words, prefixes, the suffixes. So what's the root word? Example, organ. Okay, so what's the organ? Then nization. Okay, or no, that's too broad. I think example of that is seedless. Okay, so what's the root word? Seed. What's the suffix rather? It's less. So what does seed means? Okay, and what does less mean? So seedless means without seed. So that is a skill within the reading as a skill. So those are the skills of the word identification skills. And most of that, especially the graphophonic correspondences analysis, should be mastered in the K to 3 when the students are just learning how to read. Okay, so the other part of reading as a skill is the comprehension skills. Of course, we talk about making generalization, determining cause-effect relationships, summarizing, noting details, getting the main idea, and the rest of the comprehension skills. That is the focus of the higher levels. But mind you, even in the word identification skills, comprehension is already there. Because once you know that, once you will be able to read the cat, and the teacher will show the picture of a cat, the learners will be able to understand what cat is. And maybe you can talk a little about the cat to broaden their understanding of what a cat is. Okay, so that's reading as a skill. So the skills against strategies, because they should go together. So what are the skills and what will be the strategies? Example, for main idea. So your strategy will be evaluate, summarize. Then for identifying details, your strategy would be predict, evaluate, and summarize. For sequence, you can use predict and summarize. For drawing conclusion, you can use predict and summarize. Cause effect, you can use predict, question, and summarize. And for compare and contrast, you can use evaluate and summarize. Okay. Because reading is a skill, as a skill is very difficult, there is a need for us to provide scaffolding. The first is teacher-centered. So if we talk about explicit teaching, it's I do. You model, you show them, you model the sound, you show them how to blend the sound together to form syllable, to form words like k, at, the sounds of k, and you know the sound of letter C, which is k, the sound of letter A, which is a, and the sound of letter T, which is t. Okay, so that's modeling. So there should be a mini lecture from the teacher. Then we have teacher assisted. So we practice together. We produce the sounds together. We read the word together. Then it could also be peer assisted. They can work with peer, and that is the we do part in the explicit teaching. And as soon as they master it, you allow them to do it by themselves. So that's you do. Explicit teaching, I do, we do. It could be with a teacher and with a peer, and you do, which is the independent practice. Okay, and in that way, it is already student-centered, where they apply the thinking strategies and the during independent reading strategies. Okay, The second one is reading as a process. Reading as a process is also known as the meaning-making process. So it provides an explanation of how reading happens. To construct meaning, readers draw on or sample the language information available to them. So they will apply every skills that they develop in learning how to read, and they will process all of that to be able to comprehend the text. It's the part. But, you know, if you just ask the students to open the book and they will just read and answer the question, will you allow them? Do you allow them to process? And what will they process if you did not provide them the basic skills for them to use in processing the text that they are reading? Okay? So, according to a language-based model of the reading process, for the students to be able to get the meaning, the students will predict. So in predicting, they'll use the graphophonic language cues. Everything that they've learned about letter sound, correspondences, configurizing the elements that they saw in that text, okay? And then they confirm using syntactic language clues, because they know that this is the structure of the language, so they can say that, oh, this is really teacher, because it starts with okay. Those skills that learn in predicting how to read the words, and they will confirm because they use the syntactic clues that they also develop, because it is also a skill. Then they will relate it to their experiences, they sample it, apply it. Then after that, once they develop it, they'll be able to integrate it. It is only by then that they will be able to give meaning to what they're reading. So it's a process. But what is happening in the school, in the classroom? When we call the students, we want the students to answer the questions right away. We give them very little time to read. How can they process when they only have very little time to read? When they have to apply all their knowledge developed in reading as a skill to be able to understand that, to be able to process everything, to be able to get meaning. Therefore, the challenge for us is to be able to provide our students with ample time to understand the text and even the questions that we're asking. Kayo nga, pag tinatanong kayo, matagal nga kayo makasagot. Ang cellphone nga, pag nag-upload ka, ang tagal kasi pinoproseso. And you can only do that if the students have mastered the prerequisite skills, the different skills that they have to master to be able to process a text. The third one is reading as comprehension. According to Kaiser, comprehension occurs in the transaction between the reader and the text. And of course, the reading situation, which is the purpose and the setting of the text. So here is an interactive model of reading as comprehension. So what are the three? The context, the text, and the reader. So what in the context that the student should know? The environment and the physical factor. The reading situation, the setting, and the task. What's the purpose of reading the text? So it's very important that we have to discuss that before we allow our students to read. Then let us look at the reader. The background and experiences of the reader is the text within the experience, within the background of the student, so that they'll be able to relate. And the knowledge about the subject. Are the students familiar with the text that they will be reading? Are the words within the reading ability of the students? Are the words familiar to the students? Are the words in the text, rather, familiar to the students? And of course, have we motivated them? Is the text interested to them? Because this will affect the comprehension. And of course, about the text, the organization of the text, the content, the readability level of the text, whether the text is too difficult. That's why Phil Erie talks about readability level of the text, that these are for grade 1, these are for grade 2, these are for grade 3, so on and so forth. Because the readability level of the text will greatly affect the reading ability of the students. Because the reading ability of the students should be matched with the readability of the text. You cannot give a grade 2 students with a text that is grade 6, who has the readability level of a grade 6, because it does not match, and it will affect the students' ability to comprehend the text. And of course, the author's purpose. What's the purpose of the author? And that's why there is a need for us to really do pre-reading activities, because it's in the pre-reading activities that the students will be able to put everything, the preparatory skills that they need to be able to better understand the text. So what are the factors that affect reading comprehension? Of course, in the reader. So what about the reader that will affect the comprehension? Number 1 is the script knowledge. Is the script familiar to the text? So there's no problem with us, because we use the same text in the mother tongue, in Filipino and English. Knowledge about the language. Okay, so this is where they use graphophonic analysis, the syntax, and the semantic, and even the pragmatics. Okay, the deeper meaning of what they have read. Knowledge about the structure. Okay, they should know the structure of the language. And of course, the pragmatic system, how language is used in the real context. Okay, for text, what affects them is really the text structure. What kind of text? What is the vocabulary, the language, even the specific word choice. That's why there's a need for us to unlock the words of the text that they will be reading. How well text is written, the content, is it too difficult for the students? Are the words being used not within the reading ability, or the readability level of the text is too high for the reading ability? And of course, the intent of the author. For content, it talks about the purpose. What's the purpose of the author in writing the story? And of course, the setting and the character. So the fourth one is reading as development. Reading is an interplay of one's experience, the oral language, and the ability to interpret written symbols. Okay? As you look at the diagram, it's always with the experience. This is also what Anderson stressed in his schema theory, that the background knowledge, the experience of the students really will help them comprehend. So we cannot give them a text that is not within their comprehension, because it's developmental. It should start from experience, followed by oral language. They talk about their experience orally, and later on, when you introduce them to a written text, they will be able to develop and comprehend the text, because it is part of their experience, and it's part of their oral language, or the many vocabulary that they have in their oral repertoire of knowledge. Okay. And this is the reason why we have the mother tongue, the Filipino, and the English, because it's the same experience that they talk about, that they develop, they talk about in oral. And once they'll be able to read, they will be able to relate all those experiences that they've shared orally into the written text. And it's the same experience once they know the second language, or the Filipino, for those whose mother tongue is not Filipino, they'll be able to relate that as soon as they have enough vocabulary in the oral language. They use the same experiences, talk about the experiences in the second language, or even in the third, once they have enough vocabulary. And it's the same experience, the same oral language skills that they will apply once they'll be able to relate those in the written knowledge or written text. So reading is development. It follows a system. There is no shortcut. They have to begin with experiences, use that experiences in the oral language, which will be discussed later once we talk about the Big Six. And the last one is reading as a strategy. Strategies are conscious, flexible plans a reader applies to a variety of texts. The use of strategies implies awareness, reflection, in interaction between the reader and the author. So the students reading that text should be interacting with the author, knowing about the character, knowing about the purpose of the author in writing that. Strategies do not operate individually or sequentially, but are interrelated and recursive. Meaning to say, the different strategies that you apply can be used all over again and again and interchangeably. Okay? The goal is the active construction of meaning and the ability to adapt strategies to varying reading demands. So what are the two basic strategies? We have the cognitive and the metacognitive strategies. So for cognitive, what are the different strategies that we use to develop our cognitive skills? We have the previewing, highlighting, outlining, taking notes, mapping information, rereading, finding key vocabulary. And these are the things that we do once we are reading. See? So we need to develop all those. We need to provide our students with ample exercises to be able to use previewing, highlighting, by asking them to, okay, underline the words that you do not understand. Underline the words that give you the best meaning of what the text is trying to drive at. And of course, the skills, these are predicting, inferring, self-questioning. Okay, when you read, okay, is my prediction correct? What gives me the idea that my understanding is really the one that the author would want me to understand? Okay, monitoring, clarifying, evaluating, summarizing, and visualizing. And these are critical skills for our students to be able to better understand what they read. So let us summarize. What are the 5 views about reading? Okay, and maybe before that we would be able to, shall we talk about reading? So what are the keywords about reading? That reading is what? A dynamic process. It's alive. The students should be able to interact with the text that they are reading. So it's never a dull moment. Then what are the 5 views? Reading as a skill. What's the takeaway? That reading, because reading is a skill, it can be learned. But because it is a very difficult and complex skill, it has to be taught systematically, explicitly, by doing, by modeling, I do, by working together, we do, and by allowing the students to do it by themselves. You do. So it's explicit teaching. The second is reading as a process. It's a meaning-making process. That's our keyword. So allow the students, give students ample time to read and ample time to apply the skills that they've learned to be able to read. Next is reading as comprehension. That the text, the context, and the reader is very important to be considered before we give the students a text so that they will be able to comprehend what they've read. The fourth one is reading is development, that it should always start from where the students are. From their experience, move to oral language before they will be introduced to a written one, which will be further discussed in the Big Six. And the last one is reading as a strategy. And there are two big strategies that our students should develop: the cognitive and the metacognitive strategies.